Hi, I'd like to read you a story called Too Many by Nora Unwin. It's a story about a black cat, two kittens, and a witch. And one of the reasons I chose this book is because for the first time in years, we're going to have a full moon on Halloween. It was dark, pitch black, and two kittens were wandering in the woods. Treetops swished and creaked, dry leaves muttered, queer noises scared them. Lost and abandoned, they plodded on, through the darkness with their ears laid back and their whiskers alert. Wish Mother were here to bring us a nice juicy mouse, or the boss to give us a saucer of milk. Why did he say you're too many? 'Cause that's what he called us, stupid. You mean our real names? Suppose so. Sounds queer to me. They struggled on in silence for a while. Which am I then? You're two, I'm too many, 'cause my tail's longer. How so? Longer tail, longer name. There was another silence while two thought about its tail. I think mine's fatter, he said, but mine's longer. Fatter, longer, fatter. They stopped talking. Look, I see something. Where? There. Is it a star? Whatever it is, let's try to reach it. As they pushed on, the tiny light grew stronger. It seemed to come from a window, and the window belonged to a house. The house was very small and crooked, but it had a door and a chimney. The kittens hesitated. Then they climbed the one rickety step, and too many scratched gently at the door. They heard a soft thud inside and the sound of padded feet crossing the floor. They waited, but nothing happened. Two cocked his head to listen more closely. Somebody's snoring, he whispered. Too many scratched again at the door. A low meow sounded under the crack. Who are you? What do you want? We're lost and we're hungry, and we're tired of scrambling through the woods. May we come in? There was no answer, but the tip of one long whisker showed under the door. Who is we? Asked the cat's voice. Two, and too many, answered the kittens together. Ibbly wibbly. What color are you? Black, all black. There was another silence. Well, in that case, maybe I can let you in, but not for long. It's nearly Halloween, you know. And there stood the biggest black cat the kittens had ever seen. Hello, who began to, but at that moment there was a rattling of the latch. The door opened a crack, and there stood the biggest cat the kittens had ever seen. He was coal black, with enormous whiskers and eyes of burning amber. The kittens quailed under his gaze, but the smell of warmth indoors was inviting. Follow me, said the big cat, motioning them in with a wave of his handsome tail. They squeezed noiselessly through the opening and looked about. The room was lighted by one candle, and a little fire glowed on the hearth. There wasn't much furniture, just a table, a chair, an old chest, and a great high bed. In the bed was a huge bumpy lump. This was where the snores were coming from. What do you think it is? What's that? Too Many stood on his hind legs to look. Better bat your blinkers, you'll soon see, whispered the big cat. And then you'd best get out of sight, because you are too many. Now get right off, and I'll see what I can spare for supper. Without a sound, he opened a little trap door in the floor and disappeared. The kitten stared after him, but he didn't return. Better wash now. Gracious, yes. You look awful. Not as bad as you. You do too. Don't do. Psst. What's that? They looked up. There was a brief commotion over their heads. Now the kittens saw dozens of rows of bats hanging from the rafters. The flickering candle cast great shadows about the room. It showed cobwebs which festooned the walls. It revealed a tall black hat hanging on a peg. They also noticed a big broom against the wall. 2 black leather shoes lay side by side under the bed. The firelight reflected on their silver buckles. On a shelf by the candle, a clock ticked steadily. Still the snoring went on, deep and even. Suddenly, the trap door noiselessly opened and the big cat reappeared. His mouth looked full. From it dangled 2 mouse tails. He laid his catch on the hearth. The kittens sniffed hopefully. They knew better than to pounce. The cat gave them a warning glance before he stretched up to a high shelf, poured something from a jug, and put a full saucer on the floor next to the mice. All yours, he said majestically, but leave me the tails. He turned away and busied himself with a saucepan on the fire. 2 and Too Many each grabbed a mouse and ate ravenously. 2 almost crunched the tail before Too Many stopped him. Watch out, Greedy. That's his, remember? They drank every drop in the saucer. It wasn't at all like the milk which they had been used to, but it tasted good. They looked at each other. Better wash now, like Mother said. They started on a thorough cleaning, pink tongues busy, claws going to work. They bit out the burrs that had stuck to their coats in the woods and helped each other do behind their ears. After scooping up the 2 mouse tails and popping them in a cupboard, the big cat settled on the bed rail. The clock ticked on. The snoring continued, and the amber eyes watched. The kittens had reached their tails and were just about ready to wash the last inch when suddenly from the candle shelf there came a deafening racket. Brrr! All Bedlam seemed to let loose at once. 2 and Too Many shot straight up in the air and down again, their fur standing out like porcupine quills. All the bats left their moorings and went whirling around the room. The spiders throbbed on their web. The broom in the corner fell down with a clatter. The big cat leaped from the bed rail and landed on the bump in the bed. He clawed back the coverlet with a shrill meow. Swiftly he pounced at the clock, knocking it to the floor. There it whirred to a stop. In their fright, The kittens rushed for safety and hid behind the great bushy broom, where they crouched trembling. Soon they realized the room was quiet again. The snoring had stopped. They peered out from their hiding place. And what do you think they saw? The ugliest looking witch they had ever seen. Gradually, the bump in the bed rolled over, and two long, skinny hands appeared. They had knobby knuckles and yellow fingernails. Slowly, the hump rose up, and there sat the ugliest woman the kittens had ever seen. She had a big hooked nose, like a hatchet. She had a chin looking like a hatchet, straggly white hair, and eyes as yellow and enormous as the cat. When she gave an enormous yawn, her teeth looked like bits of coal. She glared about herself, frowning. Grizzle my gizzard, another year gone by. She scratched her head, rubbed her eyes, and stared at the big cat on the bed rail. Blackington, what have you got for me to eat? With one flying jump, the big cat left the bed rail and disappeared into the cupboard. Before you could say snice, smice twice, he was back, carrying a platter between two paws, which he placed before her. On it were 7 skinned frogs lying on a dock leaf, with a large pile of stewed mouse tails heaped beside them. Looked like pink spaghetti. Is this all you've got? Snapped the witch, gobbling up the delicacies easily. No finger toe broth or pickled ears. She looked fierce, but the cat did not appear in the least bit afraid of her. He pounced to the cupboard once more and brought out a tall brown jar. The witch sniffed at it, then gulped down its contents, looking quite pleased. Now Blackington is over at the pot, stirring, and the witch is getting dressed. That's better, she said. Now I must get dressed. Is the flying potion ready? Blackington ran to the saucepan and stirred it vigorously. Little poppings and bubblings could be heard. The kittens glanced at each other and shivered. Maybe we should get out of here quick before we get put into that pot, whispered two. But how can we? Too many whispered back. At that moment, the old witch clambered out of bed and stomped over to the chest. She opened it with a bang, drew out an assortment of garments, and proceeded to dress herself. First, she pulled on some long black stockings and fastened a striped yellow petticoat over her nightie. Next, she put on a black check petticoat, then a black one with yellow spots, and lastly, an old black skirt. Over this went a tight black bodice hooked with hawk's claws down the front. She screwed her hair back and fastened it with a goose's wishbone, tied a white cap on under her chin. Finally, she lifted the tall black hat from its peg and jammed it firmly on her head. Blackington, where are my shoes? She demanded. In a trice, Blackington had them out from under the bed and helped her slip them on. But one was short its button. Drat those rats, scolded the witch. They must have gnawed off. Have you been off guard, Blackington? Here's her black hat. And there are the two kittens hiding in the broom. The big cat disappeared, but returned in a moment with some string to tie on the shoe. Now, while this was going on, a large spider suddenly dropped on its web and hung right in front of Too Many's nose, making him cross-eyed. Better get out of this, it whispered, if you don't want to ride. The kittens were too startled to answer. The spider climbed back to the beam before Two and Too Many could look for an escape. More things happened. Here's Blackington stirring the pot, and there's the witch with the two cats. "Now," cried the witch, fastening on a large black coat, "it's time we're off or we'll be late. I'd like to win the trophy this year. Is the potion strong? Put plenty of it on my broom and give me the soaring dust to go in my pocket. We're sure to need it for the Grand Moon race." As she spoke, she bent down and grasped the broom handle and set it upright. The kittens noticed a twinkle in her eye that they could not see before. They dared not run. So they clung fast to the bristles. The light in the room was very dim, and they were so black that nobody saw them. Blackington was so busy that he had quite forgotten them. While the witch was watching the big cat, the kittens crept further and further in between the bristles of the broom. And here is the witch. The bats are flying, and she's ready to go. And she says, Blackington brought the pot from the fire, and before you could say spider insider, the powdered flying potion was being sprinkled over the witch, the broom, the big cat, and all. Now the witch began to chant hoarsely. Biggly, wiggly, gorily, glump, crickety, crockety, grabbly, gump, ibbly, obbly, jumbly, jump, catchable, goobly, langerly, nomp. While she chatted, she circled slowly, turning the broom as she went. The spiders throbbed in their webs till they glittered like stars in the candlelight. The bats came down from the rafters, circling and twittering. The witch's voice grew louder. Now it was shrill. Skiggly, wiggly, ubbly, ski, quibbly, ribbly, ibbly, spree! And at that, she flew out of the house.